just whether this technology really has the potential that we should fear rather than use. What's your point of view on progress around this, the ethical use of AI?
So I think as an individual who works a lot in AI, but also as a researcher in this space, but also as an employee of Microsoft, I think that the ethical use of data in general is a very profound problem. Just because we have access to data does not mean we should be using that data in order to enable any sort of decision making at all. And to Brad's point, I think if I'm allowed to interpret that properly, I think the safe assumption here is to make is that every algorithm that is ever written has some sort of inherent bias in it. An algorithm is just a mathematical representation of human thinking, and if human thinking can be biased, then algorithms are naturally biased. And that bias follows you everywhere. The only problem with algorithms is because of the language of expression, not everybody is immediately aware of the biases that may be built into the algorithm. And because of the mathematical form that is associated with these algorithms, you think that there is no bias in there. And that's the biggest risk. And I think that's what Brad is talking about quite a bit in saying that, hey, let's pause and understand that algorithms are inherently biased because humans have been writing these, and any bias encoded in the human is encoded in the algorithm. I think the larger aspect of should we even fear AI? I think that as in every technology, there is potential for misuse everywhere. But the question is, how well can you actually make sure and put safeguards around it so that these technologies are harnessed for the better? You see that with nuclear power. You see that with electrical power. The amount of safeguarding that goes on with just pure traditional electricity is very, very high. This doesn't mean we should fear these technologies. It's just how you harness them. So I think that the power of AI is better expressed in allowing it to not just work in the service of humans, but also enhancing the explainability of what the AI is doing. The whole space of artificial intelligence in general, machine learning and so on, it is heavily based on probabilities of how things may or may not happen. And so when there is a lot of probability involved, there is inherently error involved. And I think when we lose our ability to explain what goes on with these algorithms, that is even more dangerous than not having an algorithm at all. So there is a lot of push here at Microsoft, and also I think across the industry, to see whether you can avoid making AI algorithms black box. Can you provide better explainability to people? Can you tell them what data points you used in determining what recommendations you're making to them? And in many cases, the question is, should you even make a recommendation at all? The one of the most human traits, one of the most mature human traits, I would add, is in our ability not to act. The question is, can you teach an AI when not to act? So there is a lot of green thinking that's going on over there. There's a lot of blue sky thinking that happens here. So I don't know if it's something to be feared, but I would think that we need to be careful, like we are with any other technology in its infancy. And we deploy that with a lot of safeguards, particularly around the ethical use of data in general. And one other thing that I would add is that I actually really enjoy the safeguards that Microsoft and companies like LinkedIn have put in around their data and how you can use them for your AI work. I really think that if I were an individual user outside this company, if I knew what was happening in order to safeguard my data, I would actually feel comfortable using the products and services that a company like Microsoft has to offer.
Where do you look for inspiration, Krishna, in terms of adjacent practices? For example, I know you talked already about how design thinking is influencing how you go about doing your work. Are there other ideas out there that are starting to inform your work?
Yeah, definitely. Our team is constantly going to conferences in subject domains, right? Like, for example, in the area of user interface design in terms of human-computer interaction. we do a lot of work in the academic space, but also in organizations that do work around HCI. All of our people are highly engaged in organizations like ACM, HCI International, and so on, where people learn quite a bit and look at new research. I myself am quite engaged with a lot of info visualization community and data science communities that where we draw inspiration from. There are lots of companies which are offering tremendous amount of value in terms of understanding their practices. Our own competitors, the Microsoft competitors, do tremendous work in this space, and they not only are open about it, but they also subject these work to peer reviews. So we look at all of those in drawing inspiration for our work, and we are constantly learning and trying to get better every day.
Very cool. Last question from me, at least. Why
Mm-hmm.
did you
Mm-hmm.
choose to do the line of work that you're in? What inspired you to make learning the focus of your research and now your professional work, Krishna? Was there one person or an event that led you that way, or was it happenstance?
I come from India where the poverty levels are quite staggering. And learning is one of the few ways in which you can lift people out of, the situations that they may be in into a higher plane, where you give them more opportunities, where you are allowing them to expand their talents and their impact on the world in a much more profound way. It is one of those things where when I was a lot younger, I heard a talk given by an African American professor. I forget her name now, where she was telling her students that the reason why they were in her classroom was because the learning that they were doing actually would enable them to do good in the world that nobody else can, and they had their name written on that good. And if they were not going to do that good, nobody else was going to do it, and it was they were the last line of defense. So learning has this very profound way of lifting people up, and it raises all boats, right? So it's a great space if you want to impact every aspect of life to be engaged in that. I've been involved in work that is not necessarily in the learning space, but I'm quite happy to know that I'm in the learning space right now just because of the pure empowerment and economic opportunities that come with enabling people to learn better.
Krishna, where can people find out more about your work? Is that possible, or are there ways that they can connect with you?
Yeah, a lot of our work, because of its very nature, is tinted from the outside world because we are very fundamental in terms of what we do for products and services. However, a lot of our team's innovations are also broadly advertised on platforms like LinkedIn. So connecting with me or my team members on LinkedIn would be a great way for you to find out about some of the things that we're doing, because we are constantly putting out news releases and uh, papers that our teams write and so on, where you can pick up a lot of clues into where we are heading with our thinking into a certain space. We are also in the process of getting permissions to publish our work more publicly. And once we get that, we will be able to point to those things more directly in terms of what we do within the studio.
Great. Krishna, we all do our work in a culture and in an organizational context. How important is kind of leadership and the right leadership mindset for the work that you do?
In order to innovate at all, and in order for us to really make great progress in enabling greater learning experiences, buy-in from the companies and organizational leadership is really important. I mentioned earlier that our corporate vice president sits in on all of our readouts and demos of our experiments. When you have somebody at that level sitting in on all of your readouts, it sends a message that experimentation, learning, and growth mindset is really key. Without that, it's almost impossible for us to make progress. And we hear that from our CEO all the time in terms of growth mindset and being a constant learner. So buy-in from the leadership is extremely critical in order for us to build the next generation of learning experiences at all.
Yeah, I mean, remarkable journey this company's been on the last 6, 7 years. Well, its entire existence, of course, but really this focus on growth mindset and bringing learning to all aspects of how Microsoft operates, whether it's how we sell to customers or how we innovate and engineer our products. It's really really fascinating. Great to have been a part of that storied company. Krishna, thanks so much for your time today, and happy holidays to you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Have a great holidays, and I'll catch you on the other side.
I thought the future would be cooler.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Learning is the New Working. We absolutely love hearing from our listeners. We especially love feedback on existing shows, ideas for new topics and guests, and suggestions on how we can make the show more relevant. All feedback's most welcome here. And here's 3 ways that you can talk back, move the conversation forward, and influence the future of workplace learning. First, you can rate the show on your preferred podcast platform to help pluck us from relative obscurity and help other people find us. Second, you can sign up for our newsletter or leave comments on individual shows at our brand new podcast website, which is www.learningisthenewworking.org. And 3, you can share your favorite episodes with people in your professional network on social media. We'd like to thank all our participants, our season sponsors, and you, our listeners. And we'll see you next time on Learning is the New Working.
I thought the future would be cooler.